Okay, welcome back to Cartography 1. The last time that we worked on this, we had brought in some data into Adobe Illustrator and Map Publisher. We brought in two layers of data, and they can be seen both under the map views and under the Illustrator layers. There's the tree data that was created by Avenza, and then there's some municipality cropped building data that shows the buildings of UAA, and they're located here in the layers and then down in the map views as well. Now we want to change the symbols of these so that they have some design features to them, some color to them, whatever. There are two basic ways to do this. One is to actually do it directly through Illustrator, and the other way to do this is to actually do it through Map Publisher. I'm going to show you the Illustrator way first for the buildings. So we have to make sure that the buildings are selected, and remember, you just click on this. If it's unclicked, you just go right there, and this is selected now. And then we can go to the properties, and once we click on the properties, we'll be looking at the properties for all the buildings. You'll see right now there's no fill, so I'm going to click on that, and it just gives us a grayscale here. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a shade of gray. And then I'm going to also make sure that the stroke is a thin black line, which it looks like it is right now. If you want this to be color, if it shows up as a grayscale, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the window and go to color. And then you'll have the option of clicking in the color menu here and choosing it as red, green, blue, or some other color option here. But I'm going to keep mine gray for the time being because I sort of want the buildings to be gray, and close that. And you'll see that looks like there's a thin black line outlining them, which is something that I want as well. So that's good. So now the buildings are done, and I'm going to actually lock that layer so I don't mess with anything anymore. Now I want to go and actually do the tree data, but I want to do the tree data using a GIS option so that I'm actually able to get to the attributes of the data. To do that, I'm going to go down to Map Themes right here. There are no map themes, so I'm going to add a map theme. And it's going to be called a style sheet, but you will need to give it a name, so I'm just going to call it trees. And the feature type that we're going to be looking at is point data, because we know that's point data. So I'm going to say OK. And now I've got that map theme set up right here, but I haven't done anything with it, so I'm going to have to double click it and bring it up. So here it is. There's the tree style theme. I have to specify a layer it's going to go to, and that's going to be the tree data. And now I can start to make some modifications to it to create point data that I might want to see. I do that by creating what are called rules. And I'm just going to show you how to set up a rule, and I'm going to show you a couple of rules, but I'm not going to do sort of the complete job here. So I'm going to choose the first one here, and I'm going to call this rule will be coniferous trees. Now I have two options here, a rule expression and a visual property. Here's where we start using the GIS data when we go to the rule expression. I'm going to click on this right here, and I'm going to say that this just applies to artwork that satisfies this particular expression. And I'm going to click on my attribute data, and I'm going to go down to the genus of the map, of the trees, and say when that genus equals, and here I'm going to choose a coniferous tree. And for a coniferous tree, let's see, I'm going to select pine trees. So this is only going to apply to pine trees. And now I've got to choose visual properties. And here we could choose a color, we could choose a scale, we could also modify the opacity, but I actually want to put a little symbol there instead. So I'm going to click on the symbol, and then I'm going to select a symbol from the symbols that I have brought up in the symbol window. So let me bring in the symbol window here. I'm going to close this right now and just cancel it for the time being and bring the symbol window in. And I've created a couple little tree symbols here. This is a little bit more of an advanced thing, but you'll see there are a bunch of other symbols that you can use. And the way you get to these symbols is you click on the little hamburger menu here and go down to Open Symbol Library. And there are all these symbols that you can use here, including the ones that come with Map Publisher. And I'm not going to look at all of these, but there are literally hundreds of symbols that you can use. And these are some symbols that I must have used in the past for something. I've created a couple little tree symbols, though I've done that sort of separately on my own. And I can show anyone who wants to create their own symbols how to do that, but it's a little bit more of a convoluted process. So now I'm going to go back to the trees again. I've set up that rule again. So I should have saved what I had right here, but I didn't. I'm going to click on that tree data point and make a new rule. And again, this rule, I guess I'll call it pine tree instead. And I'm going to make sure that what I'm looking at is applying it to artwork that satisfies this expression. Go to genus, and it's going to be the pine tree. And now I'm going to go to Visual Properties and click on that, and I'm going to choose Symbol. And I'm going to go from here down to the symbols that I have chosen, that I've created myself. And I can't remember which one is the pine tree, but it's really not that important. I'll just select this one right here. And I will say, OK. It hasn't applied it yet. I'm going to go back and actually create a couple more rules. I'll do another rule here, and I'll call this one oak tree. And I'm going to choose the rules, again, using my GIS data. I could use a lot of other types of data if I wanted to, because remember, I collected all this data, but I'm going to do genus, and then I'm going to scroll down to Quercus, not squirrel down. That's what a squirrel would do with the oak tree, probably. And I'm going to give it the visual property of another symbol. And hopefully I choose a different symbol here and say OK. Now, I still haven't applied this, so I'm going to open it one last time. What will happen in the rules, we'll go through each of these rules in order. So we'll first pick up pine trees and then oak trees. Well, I want all the trees to be symbolized here, so I'm going to have another one. And I'm just going to put trees for this one. And I'm going to choose yet another symbol for that one. Roll down, scroll down, and I'm going to choose this tree symbol. And say OK to that. Let's see if I've got the rule expression. That will just apply to all artwork. So what it should do is should pick up the pine trees, then the oak trees, then the rest of the trees. Now I'm going to apply it. And when I apply this, you can see that the trees are all symbolized. Now those are some big whopping trees. So I obviously want to change that a little bit. I'm going to go back into trees, and for each of these, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to rescale them. And I'm just going to scale them down to 10%. For that one, and oak tree, I'm going to scale this one as well. And for the rest of the trees as well. And again, I'm just doing a rough job here so you can see how this works. I'm applying it, and now the trees are at a better size that I might want. So now we have symbolized data both by doing it via the layers and by doing it through using a map theme where we can use the GIS data. I'm going to lock that data up there. Now that's set. Now let's add some other things here. And I'm not going to do all the things that I could potentially add, but I just want to show you some other things that you could potentially do. Behind all this, it's just white. Let's, instead of doing that, let's give it some color. So I'm going to put a box of color behind all of this. To do that, I'm going to have to do it in another layer. So I'm going to click on that layer, and then I'm going to go up here to the rectangle tool and click on that. And I'm going to draw a rectangle behind this whole thing. And you can see it assigned sort of a gray color to it, which I definitely don't want. But I can go to the properties, and now I can change the fill. Now it's only gray, so I want that color window again. So let me bring that color window back. There it is. And now I am going to change it to RGB. And let's give it sort of a greenish color of some sort. Oh, that is a pretty bright green. That's a very dark green. We'll give it sort of a light green. Well, I don't know what green that is. We'll give it sort of a green, but I'm going to bring its opacity down significantly. And I'm going to bring it down so it's at 40% opacity and sort of see what that looks like. That's something I can live with for a quick demonstration. So now I'm going to roll that over, go back to the layers, and now I'm going to lock that layer as well. And now suddenly I've got something that's looking a bit more like a map. Of course, now you can start doing other things to this as well. And since I'm working with Map Publisher, I might as well bring in some more GIS data. So going back to the shape files, let me browse for some other data that I might have here. Go back to mapping and the municipal shape files, and I could bring in streets, for example. So let me get the streets and bring them in. They're actually going to be really large and sort of unruly, but we'll use them nonetheless. And I'm going to add them directly to the tree campus using the existing scale. And so that will bring the streets all in. It will take some time, and certainly a lot of the pieces are going to be off of the canvas. But there, now the streets have come in. And I can go ahead and I can symbolize these streets in different ways. Again, symbolizing them all the same way using this system, or going to map themes and building a new map theme for them. And I'm not going to do this entirely, but let me just show you how you would do that and what you might be able to do with this. I'd go to roads, and these are going to be a line feature. So I'm going to say OK to that. And now I'm going to go to roads, and I'm going to set up rules as I did before, making sure that I select the streets. And I could have one rule being major roads. And the expression, again, could apply only to artwork that satisfied a certain expression. And I happen to know that if I go down to street symbol down here, which is the very last attribute, I have major, secondary, and local roads. And I can select that. Then I can go to visual properties, and here I can change the stroke and the stroke opacity and things like that. So I'm going to go to stroke, which is going to be how dark it is. I'm going to select a color for this using a color picker, and I'm going to sort of make it a grayish color. There we go. And then I'm going to make the weight of that stroke, how large it is, relatively large. I'm going to make them 6 point and sort of see what happens when I do that. And when I do that, it looks like maybe all the major roads are off of the map. But if I lock this up, you should see that, yeah, over here, Northern Lights, which is off the map a little bit, and there's a tree symbol that I built over there, is shown in a different weight. And I could go and do that for all of the streets. I can also crop these data as well when I bring them in. And that's something that I'll just briefly show you how to do. I've created a rectangle here, so I'm just going to select that rectangle right here. And now I'm going to go down here to the cropping function, and I'm going to crop the street data to a shape. So I'm going to choose here only the street data to that shape that I've selected. And when I say OK, I'm going to treat the locked layers as if they were unlocked. It will get rid of all that other street data that I've got there. That's something you don't have to do for this project, but you can see that you can use Map Publisher to do things like cropping. One more thing that I want to show you how to do is how you can add lines and curves and things like that. So I'm going to lock this layer, and I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to go down here and create a new layer. This one I actually want to have up above everything. So I'm going to put it, drag it up here. I actually want it even above the streets. There we go, at the very top. And I'm going to then zoom down a little bit. And let's say I want to put a line in here. And this line will ultimately be georeferenced just like your other lines are. I can go in here and I can use some of these tools. There's a pen tool where I could just make a straight line, but I like this little tool right here called the curvature tool. And if I use that curvature tool, imagine I want to make a line that goes from one tree to another. I can click on that and click another one, and it makes this cool curved line that takes me from one tree to another tree, curving it all the way. Now you'll see that it's creating a path that turns into a polygon, but don't worry about that. We'll take care of that later. I'm just going to finish off my curve right here to these trees, and then go up here and lock that layer so it's deselected. Now I'm going to go back and select it and go to the properties and change that. And I don't want it to have any fill whatsoever. So I'm just going to go here and click that little red line means no fill. And now I've just got a single line. And I'm going to change the stroke of that line. And I'm going to make it a dark green. And I'm going to make it thick too. So now I've got a thick line that if I lock it, this is what it looks like if you wanted to do something like add a line. And I'll show you one other cool thing you can do too, and then I better stop and just show you how to export this. But if you open the stroke window, you can do things like change what that stroke looks like, and you can, for example, add an arrow to it. So I'm going to add an arrow to it. And I know for a fact, oops, I don't have it selected, so I can't do that yet. Let me unlock it and select it. There we go. I'm going to add an arrowhead to it. And that arrowhead's really big. So I'm going to scale that down from 100% to 40%. And now I have an arrow. And again, I can lock that so we can see what it looks like. And you can do all sorts of different things with this. I'm just giving you a little example of some of the things that you can do. Okay, let me zoom out now. I'm going to use the Alt key to make this a zoom out. Now we have a little bit of a map. You can add text to it, but you'll have to do that on another layer. Remember, you'll always want to add new layers that then you can easily get rid of. And you could, call it the tree campus map or something like that, and add other information you want to. But when you're ready to export it, when you've created a map and experimented with it, and in this particular project, you really get to do some experimentation, you're going to go to File, and from here, you are going to export it, and you are going to export it as, and what I want you to export it as, and where you export it will be your, will be up to you as a JPEG, and you can give it a name. And make sure you use the artboard for it and do all of it, and then you'll hit that export function, and it will give you the chance to make sure that the resolution is high quality and that you're using a color model in it, so it's not black and white. And then export it, and you should be good to go. Now, I went over a lot of stuff here, and you might have a lot of questions, but as always, I am more than willing to answer your questions and talk to you and make little videos and things like that, but you got to let me know.